Dr. Russell G. Brodie, Senior Academic Executive, Educator, Global Educational Leader, and Advocate for Learning and Student Success. Dr. Brodie currently serves as Associate Vice President of Academic Affairs and Workforce Innovation and Deputy Chief Academic Officer at Red Rocks Community College. His career spans more than 25 years in higher education. His career also includes leadership in academic affairs, student affairs, global education, nonprofit governance, teaching, and institutional strategy. Dr. Russell G. Brodie, let's chop it up. How you doing, man?
Great, man. How are you doing?
Good. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you chose to be here with us, and for that, we are grateful.
Glad to be here.
So tell us a little bit about Russell G. Brodie. Who are you? Where did you grow up? Where are you from?
All right. Well, currently I'm in Denver, Colorado, but I grew up in Lewisburg, North Carolina. Very small town. Went to Lewisburg High School. Undergrad, I went to UNC Chapel Hill. For my graduate degree, I went to Duke University. And for my doctoral degree, I went to the University of Southern California. So been a little bit of everywhere in terms of just getting my education.
So growing up, the young Russell Brodie, what did you think you would be? You have any aspirations to be anything, or you was just in education and was going to figure it out?
No, initially, as a young child, I think I wanted to be a biologist. I was very interested in biology and plants. I had won some awards in elementary school, and that was the thing I was really interested in that caught my eye. I loved plants. I loved animals. So I thought I would do something in that field. I joked earlier that my parents would never get me that chemistry set that I always wanted. So they're like, no, you're not going to blow up the house. But it was a thing that I thought I was really good at and didn't have to think much about. So that's what I initially thought I was going to pursue.
Education has always been the way out for so many people. And growing up in rural North Carolina, it is no different. You either could try to pursue your education or you would go into the workforce. Seems like your parents stressed education and that was important in your household. How did your parents feel about education and you getting your education?
They felt very strongly about education. I heard those conversations from the time that I was a little boy, and I knew that education was important to them. I saw how much they stressed education to my sister. My sister's slightly older than I am. And then I saw how they stressed it as well with me. And so my parents didn't go to college, but they were two of the smartest people. So I trusted their opinion. Like, they think this is important, so I'm going to make sure that I lock in. And they stressed to us, get your education, get your scholarships, because that was important to them. And so I think I trusted their opinion of the value of education. And so I made sure that I pursued what I thought would help us all benefit from it later on in life.
Yeah, community is very important. It takes a village. And in that village, there's always the elders or the elder that nudges and gives you that extra push. Was there anybody in your life that did that for you outside of your family?
Yeah, I think I had 3 or 4 people who really saw a lot in me. And those people were Edith Anderson. She was my old music teacher. Valerie Harris. She was the secretary at our high school. Cherry Askew, who was a counselor, and Laureen Jones. She was another one of our counselors. And so those 4 women just showered me with resources, time, and energy to ensure that I had what I needed in order to be successful. And whatever it took in order for me to be successful, they made sure that I had it along with my family. So that was the thing that really helped me a lot.
Yeah, you've spent more than 25 years in education. Was higher education always the plan?
No, not at all. I originally thought I was going to pursue writing, directing, and producing. I was very much interested in being the next Spike Lee. I wanted to be able to tell the stories of our communities, Black and Brown communities. Right after college, I actually did a internship at Entertainment Tonight. And so that's what I fully planned to pursue, which was the entertainment industry. But other plans developed, and so I ended up in higher education.
Is that still an aspiration on the side? We all have these passion projects. Is that something that you still dibble and dabble with?
Yes and no. I'm smart enough to know that the amount of energy that it would take in order for that to happen, but I'm also good enough at what I do that I know I can I can write a screenplay. I can, do a radio show. I worked in radio. There is enough talent and enough skill there that I know that I can pursue those opportunities if I so desire. But I think at this point, education is the thing that I need to pursue in order to help as many people broadly as possible.
I mean, you said a mouthful, entertainment tonight and writing plays and writing scripts, and seems like you have a lot in your tool belt, and all these things shape you. All of our experiences shape us. But what was that one thing or that one job role or one position that you were in that you feel like kind of shaped you the most into being who you are today?
I would say there were two things. So in high school, the thing that allowed me to start having belief in myself was when I won the McDonald's Black History Make of Tomorrow program. That allowed me to see myself differently. I knew at that point that I could compete on a national level with other individuals, no matter what room I was in. And I think the other thing that really shaped me was when I did a study abroad to London one year, and then the next year I went to Italy. I think those two experiences in and of themselves allow me to think more globally about my capacity to provide access for other people who look and sound like me.
And, it gives you an opportunity to get outside of the United States, see how the world works outside of the U.S. and how you interact with others that are not inundated with American values and traditions. And so talk to us a little bit about that in your traveling abroad, the differences in perception, worldviews, things of that nature.
I will say it is a completely different world. When I travel globally, I am seen as an American. They also see you as a Black American, but they see you first as an American. So the responses that I get have been very positive. I have not had a negative experience when I've traveled internationally. I know that is not the case everywhere we travel, but my experience almost across the board has been very positive, and there has been a reception. There's an excitement when someone sees an American. When someone sees a Black American, there is this appreciation and respect that is given to us. And so I try to return that respect for whatever culture I'm engaging with, because I do want to be a great ambassador. I do want to be a great representative, both as an American and as a Black American, as a citizen. Like, I think that's important because I may be the only representation of my country that that person may see or see for a very long time. So I do take that seriously. So I try to conduct myself and provide the respect that I think is due individuals, and do it in a way that allows me to navigate spaces that some other people cannot and won't be able to do.
Yeah, being an ambassador, being an advocate, being an herald or a forerunner, all of that is what people see, but they don't see what the cost is to do those things. And so leadership can look very different from the inside than it does on the outside. And so there's a cost for everything that we do too, the work sacrifices, the life sacrifices, all to be able to put yourself in a position to pour into others. Talk a little bit about some of the cost that you have faced to be in the position that you're in that people sometimes don't see.
I think one of the biggest costs that you experience is lack of time, sometimes lack of peace. And also, if you're great at what you do, you are often depleted of the energy that other people have, right? So because you're constantly, to your point, you're always pouring into other individuals, you're always trying to provide access and opportunities. So there are many days that I am mentally drained, not physically, but I am mentally drained because I've had to think for myself and others throughout the whole entire day. I spend the majority of my day going from meeting to meeting. I mean, you would think that I'm helping individuals. Yes, that is true. But in order for me to help those individuals, my day starts early and I am in 6 to 10 meetings a day, every day. That's not including drop-in meetings that I have. And so that means on the weekends, that's when I have to do my work because I've been in meetings all week. And so those are the sacrifices that you make in order to be successful and to be excellent at what you do. And it is a sacrifice because it will consume a lot of your time, a lot of your energy. And sometimes you just don't want to give that to other people or other groups. And I'm also involved in a lot of boards. So it does require a lot of energy to participate and to stay active and really be involved and understand what the needs are, because you are having to put your needs to the side so that you can assist others.
Yeah, balancing the mission. And
Right.
it's that mental capital that you spend. I'm in that same situation, on a lot of boards and doing a lot of things, but all that, it requires sacrifice.
Mhm.
And you know that in the end, it's that one person that you may need to reach that if you don't pour, they may not be receiving anything.
Right.
And a lot of times when you go through that, there's no one there to pour back into yourself. So I speak about this a lot on the show and with other people. And so I will ask you the same question. How do you pour back into Russell Brodie? How does Dr. Brodie pour back into himself when there's no one else around to pour back into you?
I think that it is a skill, right? You have to be able to look at yourself and be able to both commend yourself, but also be critical. And that's just self-awareness, right? So you can't operate from a place of ego. You have to operate from a place of humility and say, you know what, there are areas I need to improve. But also you have to give yourself grace when you have done a good job or not done a good job, but also just give yourself the grace to improve and work on the things that you need to work on. I have a very small circle of people that I communicate with, and that is to protect my overall mental health, because everyone is not, just because a person is nice doesn't mean that they're for you. And just because a person is friendly doesn't necessarily mean that they're an advocate for you. So I'm very careful about who I allow to speak into my dreams, my aspirations, my visions for what I want for myself. And I try to keep a lot of that close to the vest, because I know people will intentionally try to sabotage the work that you're trying to do. And people who have inferiority complexes also are triggered by excellence. So
Oh, yeah.
you have to be careful about knowing that when you walk into certain spaces, you don't even necessarily have to say or do anything, but your mere presence will trigger them. And so you've got to be able to speak to yourself when you see those responses or actions or whispers or just those little, I don't call them microaggressions because there's nothing micro about an aggression, but those instances of actions where people are talking to you or treating you in a way that is not kind. You have to be able to pour into yourself and encourage yourself, literally.
Yeah, when you set the bar so high for yourself, there's nothing no one else can do to raise that bar, because the expectations that you have for yourself is the same expectations that you inherently put on someone else, because they should meet your level of expectation. And so you said a good point, and that's for all of our listeners. When you strive for excellence, whatever that is in your life, there will always be that person that don't want to see that, that will interpret that as you trying to be something else, but you're just trying to be great, whatever greatness is. And I think a flaw in society today is people don't know what greatness is because they define it based on their own terms. We're living in a do me culture, very selfish culture. Everything about this culture now is selfish, and there's not a lot of advocacy and giving back to anyone because we are tribal with what we have, and we certainly don't want you to take what we have. But we don't know and realize that the more you give, the more comes back to you. And so higher education leaders, you guys confront financial difficulties, things that change that's out of your control, but yet you have to stay on mission. You have to be sustainable, but you also got to encourage the next mind, the next set of bright minds to be active participants in this society. How do you do that? How do you balance that?
I think you have to operate from a place of purpose and heart, but recognize that higher education is still a business. I think when we see schools struggling or colleges and universities struggling, oftentimes that is where there is some sort of difficulty there, right? You can be very mission driven, but you also have to keep the lights on. You have to know that, yes, I'm going to do everything I can possibly do to get as many students across that stage as possible. But also, I need them to pay their bills. I need them to go to class. I need them to get their education, right? It is both things can be true at the same time. And I think a lot of times when we operate from a place of all heart, we're forgetting that higher ed is also a business. This school is a business. We've got to do what we can to support to keep the lights on so that the next generation can also benefit from this. So there's that, but that doesn't mean that I have to treat you disparagingly. I can always make sure that you have access. But the things that most students are looking for don't require money, right? You can come by my office and I can talk all day about how you should improve your work study, your study skills, providing access, giving you access to tutors, whatever resources you need. That doesn't require anything. But at the same time, I also need you to be a good steward of your own funds and finances so that you can pay your bills. I'm also trying to teach that lesson that, hey, I need you to also take care of your bills, take care of your account, because that is also a lesson that I'm also trying to teach you and train you so that when you are in the real world, you'll understand what that means to be held accountable.
Yeah. Sometimes the popular decision and the right decision are not the same thing. And you have to be very intentional with what you're doing. The days of doing things with no intention is over. Everything now is specifics. And in education, you have to guide the young minds to what's the next career on the horizon. Not the one in your mind that you think you want to do, but what is going to be beneficial to you so that will help project you in this life to come. And so with that intentionality and that purpose, you mentioned the word purpose, I think we're missing a lot of that. I see so many kids when I speak at schools that don't have purpose. And where does that start? It starts at home. It starts with the education they're receiving. It starts with their counselors. You mentioned 2 counselors that were vested in the Russell Brodie before the Dr. Brodie, right? But now these kids are running around aimlessly and I see them all the time and they don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. They don't know what kind of resources they need to have. And so how would you solve that problem? How would you pivot back? Where's the breakdown? What can we do to reinforce that?
I think one of the misconceptions is that the first time you hear a lot of this information is when you go to school. No, even if you're a first generation student, you have parents, whatever lessons they can instill in you, you should take. And I think that's the thing. We have a generation now that a lot of them are raising themselves, but that's also not new, right? That's not unique to the United States. But what I do think is different now is that we're so attached to learning but not really understanding, right? Everybody has a phone that has access to everything you possibly would want to know, but we don't use that phone in a way that's going to help you be resourceful and knowledgeable so that you can take care of yourselves. And a lot of times when we send students to schools, we're expecting the school administrators, the teachers, the counselors to raise children and to raise students and to raise learners. And that's not the first time that they should be held accountable and taught many of these lessons. Those lessons begin at home. And that should just be a continuation of a pattern of being held accountable so that they can be successful. I remember when I was young, even during the summer, my mother would just make me sit, right? She would say, hey, go over there and sit down. Not because I was doing anything wrong, but she was teaching me, hey, you're going to have to be able to sit in a classroom for hours and hours and hours at a time. And you can't be fidgeting. You can't be wandering aimlessly or thinking about other things. You got to be able to concentrate and focus. And if no one ever teaches you that skill, you don't know how to do that. It's very helpful now that I'm in meetings, 8 hours, from meetings back to back. But it allows me to stay focused in ways that a lot of other people can't. And a lot of people use excuses of why they can't focus. And I get it. Everybody has issues and things that are going on. But again, the first time that someone tells you to sit, to pay attention, to not fidget, to focus, to take notes, that shouldn't be when you enter a classroom. That should be when you're at home. And a lot of people just don't know that or understand that. But we're quick to throw a phone in a child's hand and say, oh, go do this, go play with this. And that's why they don't understand the need to do that.
Yeah. Mental resilience, Dr. Brodie. That's what it's all about. And these kids don't have they're mentally fatigued and haven't done anything to be fatigued. They do not have the mental fortitude to do a lot of the things that they're tasked with doing. And that is a challenge. If no one ever challenges you mentally so that you can have the strength to make it through classes, right? I think about what I went through in elementary school, middle school, AP classes, CP classes, advanced courses.
then going on to college, undergrad, and then graduate school and doctoral programs, right? Each level it's more difficult, but you hopefully have acquired the skills so that you can be successful.
Well, these things prepared you for that.
Right.
Growing up in small Lewisburg, I were first in everything. I remember my high school was small and we had grades 6 through 12, no middle school, no junior high. You was in that same building at 6th grade through 12th grade. And in that, back then, early in those times, it still was a lot of racial tensions growing up in Franklin County. And, you remember they would segregate you by groups, like A group, B group, C group. I mean, you literally would have students walking around in a C group and people telling them they just average. That was terrible for education to do a child like that mentally, that they think I'm just average, but my point is, in the A groups, I was the only black male. There was several black females, only black male. In the beta club, in our entire county, I think we had 3 high schools, Bunn, Franklinton, and Lewisburg. You would go to the beta club conventions, and I was the only one in my whole school that was a black male. And I believe at the time, I'm a couple years ahead of you, Lewisburg might have had 2.
Baby.
One was Roosevelt Perry, and I remember who the other one was. Bunn had none. Right? So that's an indictment on where we came from and just the fortitude that you had to have to succeed academically, because you truly were the only one. And I think a lot of times, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, here's the tricky part about that. A group, B group, and C group actually were all the same, right? People who were in C group were just as smart as people in B and A group.
They were. Yeah.
Every single time. But guess what? There were only 25 seats. So once they got to 26, well, you can't be in A group. You got to be in B group. Okay. Oh, you can't be in B group. You got to be in C group. But C group was just as smart as A group every single time.
For sure.
But that's how the system was set up at that time. Right. And the other thing was C group students. Yes, some of them just were happy being a C student. They were okay. They accepted the label and they were okay with the label. But I think sometimes those who ended up in A group or B group, because we had the exact same thing. If you had a parent who advocated for you, guess what? All of a sudden you went from C group to B group or A group. If your mama came up to the school, my child deserves to be in A group or B group. So if your mama couldn't get off work, guess what? You were going to be in B or C group. That's the difference, right? You had to have a parent who was going to advocate that. They would allow certain people who look like us, yes, you can be in A group. We're going to have 1 or 2. But the rest, if their parents did not advocate for them, they ended up in the lower grades.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Brodie, you, our beloved St. Augustine's College here in Raleigh, you spent some time working there and you help expand their international experiences. What was your experience like in shaping those bright minds there, and how did working for the institution help shape you for the rest of your career, what you're doing now?
I will say working at St. Aug was one of the best opportunities I ever had. Right. And that's the thing about working at an HBCU. You get opportunities that you will not get at a 4-year institution somewhere else. Because here's what an HBCU is going to say. They're going to say, hey, I need you to be a director of this, but also can you oversee this thing and this other thing? And hey, and can you be the coordinator for this other opportunity? Now, yes, that's based on finances. We understand that part. But also the fact that they're willing to give you a chance. If I were at other institutions, might I have that opportunity? Probably not. But the point was they still saw something in you and they would give you an opportunity to excel, to develop, and to make mistakes and still grow. And that skill then helped you to relate to the students in a way that they can't relate when they go to other institutions. And so what that allows you to do is then have compassion and empathy for those students and say, I hear you. I understand. What can I do to serve you? How do you need assistance? And I think that is the difference when you have an HBCU, is that oftentimes the faculty and staff are tuned in. They are attached to those students because they want to see them succeed in a way that they probably don't feel connected to at other institutions, because you simply just don't see as many students who look and sound like them. I'm out in Denver, Colorado. The Black population is very low here at our school, and at many of the schools out here in Denver. But the ones that I can connect with, the ones that I can reach, I make every effort to have that connection with them. And there are other students who don't look like me that I also still have a connection with, because why? If you can pay attention, if you can follow the rules, if you can take advice, I can help just about any child. I mean, that's just truth. If you can pay attention and follow the direction that you're given, I can help you be successful. And so I try to pour into whatever bucket is open and available, because I understand that it's not just about just students who look and sound like me. It is about providing those opportunities to support students so that they feel welcome and they feel like they belong wherever they are.
Yeah, I serve on a board at Duke at your alma mater. And part of what we do is help design policies and different types of curriculum that will advance clinical trials and different types of research. But we use AI a lot in that. And in your current work, you also do a lot with AI education. And, AI excites me because it is just another tool to add to your tool belt. Whatever advancements we make in technology can always be perceived as evil just as much as good, but it's how you access it and how do you utilize it, because it's not stopping because you are or you want to be a deterrent. What excites you about AI, and how are you guys using AI now in the educational field?
Yeah, we just had a meeting today about that. I had attended an AI conference about a month ago. And so we're trying to figure out, we're keeping it simple. How do we improve enrollment? How do we improve persistence? How do we improve retention of our students? But I think for me, how I'm approaching it is, how can we improve our academic operations so that we're more efficient? It's not that the AI is going to replace an individual, but how can it make the ones that are working more effective and more efficient at what they do so that they can serve more students? That's the goal that I have with AI. And again, you can try to avoid using it. It's almost mandatory now that you've got to be able to plug in and know how to provide the correct prompts, work with the agents, work with the bots, whatever it is, and do it in a way that allows you to be more effective and efficient, because your materials, your work materials, if they're not run through some sort of AI when they compare it to others, it's just not going to sound the same. It's not going to feel the same, and nor is it going to have the same weight, because that AI is going to make sure that those keywords, those key components are part of that discussion. And so I think no matter how good of a writer you are, you still probably are thinking about, how can I use AI to at least support or identify some weaknesses in my writing or work, whatever it may be. So I think for me, we're trying to teach our faculty right now, we will support whatever you do, right? So if you say no AI on this assignment, no AI on the assignment. If you say AI is allowed, so what we use right now is sort of, we call the signal methodology, which is you signal to us what is available or acceptable. So a stoplight means no AI is allowed at all. A yellow light says you can use it sometimes or for portions of this assignment. Or a green light is you absolutely can use AI. Show me how you did your work. Show me what your prompts were. So I think just understanding the nuances and knowing when to use it is going to make all the difference. But we're holding our faculty accountable to say, you have to put it in your syllabus, because that is the contract between you and the student. You have to tell us, how did you decide? And so I also sit on our behavioral intervention team. So a lot of times we'll have complaints about academic integrity. And one of the first questions I ask is, I'll ask the instructor, did you have an AI policy in your syllabus? And if they say no, then I said, well, how would the student know what your expectations were? You did not communicate. So that's not on the student, that's on you as the instructor of this course. And so I'm going to have to excuse this academic integrity violation because you did not do your part. You've been told that you should have an AI policy in your syllabus. You didn't. And so therefore I can't hold the student accountable for what you did not communicate.
Yeah. I think AI is right now is the bright, shiny object. No different from Google, no different from Yahoo or Alta Vista when we had these search engines. It is just a more evolved piece of technology. And you're definitely right. I tell people all the time, it's not that you're using AI, is you're not taking the time to understand what AI is and what it's capable of. The prompt engineering is so important. You can just, if you just spit anything out there, yeah, you using AI, but it's a bunch of gooble gobble. You know what I mean? So I'm sure you see on the academic level that researchers and kids that know how to use it and prompt engineer in the right way, it enhances their work because it saves time on research and different things that you have access. And so I'm happy that you said that. And I was telling the elderly lady, she was about 75, and I was at a conference. She was talking about her fear of AI. I said, well, here's how you have to look at this. I said, every piece of technology from whenever you were born back in the 40s or 50s, you were still in that same frame of when the technology came out. I said, so the issue is people choose to not engage with it. And in their non-engagement, they act as if the technology was the problem, but you were exposed to it just like someone in a generation above you and below. So we all are immersed with it at the same time. It's just the level of engagement. And because you don't engage, you therefore interpret that as it's no good. I don't want to use this, but you still have the access to it. So we're talking about access. What is something profoundly human that you don't believe that AI technology will ever replace?
For me, it's connection and clear communication. The AI will give you information. It will give you details. And it can be done in a way that is very humanistic, but real connection. There's no substitute for a teacher saying, you did a great job. Hey, Tony, you did great on that paper you did. That was a great presentation. Now, AI can prompt you with that or send you an email, or even if you have the audio on, it can tell you that. But there's no substitute for a teacher that communicates that clearly, and then demonstrates their care for you. I don't think the AI can give you care. I think it can give you a semblance of that. I think it can be very intentional about the information and the prompts that it gives you and guide you in a lot of ways and make you more effective and more efficient. But I think that care, and if it is giving you care, then that's a problem, right? If you are so attached to the AI that you don't recognize that this person is not real and you are relying on it for all of your validation, therein lies a problem, right? That should not be how you are using the AI. The AI should be there to support you, but ultimately you have to be able to think strategically on your own. The AI is just there to complement and support what you do. And regardless of whether you engage with AI or not, AI is engaging with you, right? So we all know that we get emails or prompts all the time that, hey, there was another breach, like your information has already been put out on the internet or whatever it is. And so it's going to engage with you whether you like it or not. So it's best to at least understand some of it, so at least you can question. And it's like any other tool, right? When I get a prompt, I still have to read and go through like, well, that's not exactly what I meant. That's not what I said, or that's not absolutely true. And so you have to question the validation of some of the information that's provided to you. But if you don't read and if you just take it at face value, then there are going to be lots of mistakes, because it will continually get better, yes, but it's also still going to make mistakes. And so you have to be able to be strong enough to challenge the information that you're providing.
There's a uniqueness about humans that systems can't duplicate, and that is our ability to express our senses. Like you said, the touch, the pat on the back, the breath, the sight, the hearing, all of those things can't be replaced autonomously. And so you definitely are correct with your assessment of what AI is and what it isn't. And you talked about care. So I want to pivot a little bit about care. You know, I do a lot in the cancer space, you know, being diagnosed with cancer. But you also, I tell people, caretakers and caregivers and family members go through this experience along with that person. Your dad, several years ago, passed away from multiple myeloma. So I want to move from your professional journey to that. You know, how did that affect you? You know, when you heard that he had cancer and you heard the word cancer, what did that do to you?
I think for me and my family, we immediately went into problem solving mode. So me and my sister immediately started doing research. she's the queen of, she loves medical research and figuring out what issues are. And so I did the same thing. We were both trying to look up, how could we address this? How could we advocate for our father? We were very diligent. My mother was also super supportive in that she never left my father. She was always there by his side. So I think we just took a team approach to it. I remember telling my employer, hey, I'm going to have to take off on Fridays because my father has chemotherapy. And I remember my boss saying, well, I don't know if we can approve that. And I remember saying, I'm not asking you. I'm telling you, I'm not going to be here on Fridays. Now, whatever we need, paperwork we need to fill out, we'll have to fill it out. But I'm not going to be here on Fridays because I have to make sure that my father gets the chemotherapy that he needs. And that was one of the times that I really was just adamant. And I think that was a good lesson, because I also recognized then that people you work with, they're your coworkers. They're not your friends, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
even a good boss at times is going to do horrible things. And you have to still be able to advocate for yourself in the face of adversity, whatever that looks like. And I just needed to make sure that I could be there for him in whatever way possible. Now, my father was still very strong and still very resilient, so he wasn't asking for much. And even when you asked him how he was doing, he would never say he felt bad. He would just say he felt icky. That was his word. I feel icky. And that was about the extent to which he would talk about how he felt. And so I think understanding that, each of us, my sister and I, my mom, we each played our own role. And so how it affected me was I wanted to just make sure that I understood what he needed and that I could provide whatever I could, in whatever capacity that was. And so I think we all just took on roles, and we were also we didn't talk about it much in the sense that we told a lot of people, because we also understood, right? Even well-intentioned people sometimes say terrible things or do terrible things. And so we sort of protected him by not really talking about it much with people outside of the family and a small group of people, because we knew that even people who don't mean any harm sometimes say the wrong thing at the wrong time. And so we were just very protective of how we discussed his cancer and who we shared pieces with. And we also wanted him to have the autonomy to tell whoever he wanted to tell, or not discuss with whoever he didn't want to discuss it with. We felt like that was his decision to make.
Yeah, I call poison pellets. People can
Mhm.
mean well, but they insert poison pellets, and you have to be guarded of that. You have to close your ranks, close your circle up, and really just trust and believe, because the fight starts in your mind.
Right.
And the more people that you can keep out of your mind, keep those conversations out of your mind, keep those poison pellets or those strayful words out of your mind, the better that you will be. I want to celebrate him a little bit. So you're the only son, and tell us a little bit about your father. Who was he, and what do you want the listeners to know about him?
My father was very quiet, but he could be funny and talkative at times. I think the thing that most people recognize and remember from him is that he was a man of integrity, right? You weren't going to move him. He didn't care what you said. Right was right, wrong was wrong. He wasn't going to bend on that. So you can do what you want to do, but he was going to do the right thing. And I think that was the thing that made him so honorable and so respectful. He was huge on respect. And yet, a lot of people at church just loved and adored my father, because he did have these little relationships with people all across the church, and he was very personable with that. He wasn't like this big boisterous person. He didn't, try to fill a room. He was happy, working in the background. And so, but the thing about him was he was very strong. He was very smart. I think the thing that I always admired about him was he could fix anything. If it could be fixed, he was going to fix it. And his mantra was, if I can't, I'll break it trying to fix it, if it's possible, right? So his thing was he was going to do everything to fix it. And so that was the thing that I admired. Like, I just remember things being broken around the house or whatever it might be. And my dad was like, oh, I can fix that. And he would go and do it. But that was how him and my mother were. My mother, she could like sew anything or fix anything like that. My father was, very much an auto mechanic type sort of guy, very manly guy. And so he could like, oh, I'm going to go fix this. I'm going to be outside working on this or that. but him and my mother always worked as a team. So even sometimes when he's outside, he would say, "Hey, Connie, come outside." And so he would always invite her outside to do nothing but just sit there and watch him work. But that's how they operated. So everything they did as a team together. And so that made it easy for me. Like I'm watching people like, oh, and I learned then like, oh, sometimes you have to rely on someone else. But the thing about him was that he did operate from a place of integrity. And I think that's the thing that people most admired about him, that they knew he stood his ground on what was right.
Yeah, time is something that we never really had control of, and it is something that we take for granted. But you're only really blessed with the time that you have from when you open your eyes to when you close them. That's the only time that you were guaranteed, and that's time that you're looking back on even then. So you're never looking forward to time because you are not promised that. And so how has that affected you in your life regarding time, space, intentionality? How has that impacted you now?
Yeah, I will say for me, my tolerance for things that are not excellent, I don't have a lot of patience with that. I think God blessed me to be able to move out to Denver because it also allowed me to separate from anything that I thought would in some capacity impair my mental ability to be able to focus. So that means I don't talk to a lot of people. I don't talk to a lot of friends. I don't communicate a lot with a lot of extra people because so much of my focus is my work. But the tolerance for that or the intolerance of that happened once my father passed because all of a sudden I saw people differently. I couldn't entertain conversations that didn't go anywhere. I couldn't entertain people who were just talking about frivolous things. I could not talk to people who were not about doing something important or valuable. And it didn't mean that I didn't love the people. I still love the people, but I will say that it allowed me to think differently about a lot of relationships. And it was great, right? So I see it as a blessing because that's how my father just naturally was. He didn't have a lot. I will say he didn't have a big friend group, even though people were friends with him and friendly to him. But I'm sure if you asked him, he would say, "Oh, I don't have that many friends." And that's how he operated, and he was just fine. And I think you learn what your boundaries are because suddenly something that you thought or relationships or friendships that you thought were important, suddenly you're like, it's not as important, and you're okay with that because you don't have a tolerance for that any sort of foolishness at all anymore.
Yeah, he was a rock for you. He was a foundational piece for you. He was that foundation. A lot of things have transpired and you've gone on to do a lot of things. Have you had that moment where you reflect and said, man, I wish dad could see this?
Yes and no, because here's how I look at it. My father was a man who worked things to completion. I just said like if he could fix it, he was going to fix it. So I approach my father's passing very much the same way. That if God wanted him to live another day, he would have. I remember when he was first diagnosed that how even that whole situation came about, right? He happened to have an injury on his hand. His hand wasn't healing. So when that happened, he happened to go to the doctor and the doctor was like, "Oh, we have to admit you right now because you have no blood in your body." So my father had been walking around for a very long time with low or no blood. And so I have to think, well, God's grace was covering him through that whole situation. So every day that I got past that was a bonus day that wasn't promised in the first place because he should have been gone a long time ago. And so for me, I'm always appreciative of every moment. I don't look at it as if my time with him was cut short. That doesn't mean I don't miss him every day. I absolutely miss him every day. I speak to him and talk to him every day, in my own way. But yet I know that my dad would not have left if his work wasn't done. He just wouldn't have. It's like, I got work to do. So the fact that he is gone lets me know, okay, that's a deal that him and God had. His work was done and he could, my father was saved. He was in the church, loved God. So I don't look at him as a person who didn't have hope, and so I always look at it, my father's not here with me physically, but I approach it. He's on a long study abroad trip. That's how I look at it. He's here, he's around, but he's on study abroad trip and I'll see him one day soon.
Oh yeah. He was an eagle. Eagles don't quack. He didn't go around quacking. He was soaring.
Yeah.
And, for people that's listening and hearing your heartfelt memories, fond memories of your dad and, how Southern kid, black kid from a rural county can succeed. There's a lot of good nuggets here that should encourage younger people that they can make it and older people that it's never too late. What would you say to the person listening right now who knows they're capable of more, but is afraid to take that?
I would say take the first step and give it all you got, right? There are times that I know I have been in conferences, I've been around the world doing different things. And sometimes I'm amazed hearing my own self talk, right? Because I'm like, where is that coming from? And I know that's nothing but God has developed skills and given me abilities and talents that I'm like, sometimes I'm literally shocked. Like, where did that come from? I didn't have that thought myself. So that thought had to come from somewhere else. Where did that come from? So I know that's God giving me divine understanding, wisdom, revelation, whatever it may be. So I will say for the people who are afraid of trying, who are nervous about taking a step, do it anyway. Take the first step. You may fail. You may fail horribly. You may fail miserably, but take the first step and then give it all you got, because you only get one life. And you want to be able to look back and say, I gave it all I got. Even if I failed, at least I tried. I can look back and say, you know what, if I don't do anything else, I've had a very successful career. I've done amazing things all around the world. I've won awards. I've spoken internationally. Just last year, I spoke in Scotland at a conference. I spoke in LA. I've done all these amazing things to the glory of God. God blessed me. I had amazing parents, had amazing sister, amazing family and friends that supported me. But you have to make the choice. You have to make the decision. They can't make that for you. You have to decide that my today is going to be different from my yesterday. And if you put your foot forward, it will change. And a lot of it is your mentality. It's the way you think. It's the way you operate. But you have to make the choice. You have to make the decision. No one can make that decision for you.
Mm-hmm. You can literally change atmospheres and environments with your presence. We talked about places and spaces, right? And sometimes when you enter the room, you shift and change the entire atmosphere, and you don't even know why that's happening, but it is definitely a divine presence, or sometimes people call it your aura. But we know differently what that is. But sometimes God will bless you with a skill set that shines. It comes out to play when it's time to play, right? It's almost like having a superpower. You don't need it, it ain't there. But when you need it, it shines the brightest, right? And it impacts the most lives.
Right.
I was thinking, like I spoke at ASCO convention, the largest oncologist convention in the world. And I'm like you just be marveled at what the God that we serve can do and have you speaking and saying things. But when you change the atmosphere, the whole environment, I remember after I spoke, it was people on the front row crying. Russell, it was one of the pharma executives from Switzerland said, man, all we needed was an organ. And we would have went to church. Now, I didn't have the intentions of taking people to church, but I'm just saying the power in your presence and in your words and in your impact. And that is something that can't be created or simulated. You know the ones that have it, and you know the ones that don't. And the ones that have it, you are set above on a different plane. And I think sometimes for God to polish you off, you have to separate yourself. And I think separating yourself and being in Denver, Colorado, which is a ways from North Carolina, it is the polishing effect. It's just shining you up. And so you want to do a quick rapid fire? We're getting close to the end here, but we want to do a rapid fire.
Sure.
All right. Early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
Why?
Because I can focus late at night. During the day, I've found, like, even if I try to write something during the day, I can't write. But between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m., well, I'm in my zone then. I can crank out anything.
Coffee or tea?
2 years ago, I would say tea, but now it's pretty much coffee because every event that I go to, there's coffee. So pretty much coffee.
You done got addicted.
I'm just used to it now. As long as there's cream and sugar there.
Mountains or beach?
Because I live in the mountains, I'm going to say beach. You get tired of mountains after a while, even though it's lovely, but I'm going to say beach.
Classroom experience or field experience?
Field experience.
And why is that?
I think there is no substitute for experiential learning, tactile learning, engaging with people, and being able to understand from personal experience. So I would say field experience.
Domestic travel or international travel?
International, every time.
Okay. Favorite country you visited?
Greece. The people were amazing. The food was amazing. I was treated well, had an amazing time. It's a tie between Greece and Italy, but both were amazing, but I would say probably Greece.
Okay. A country that you haven't visited that you want to visit?
Thailand.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the wish list.
Mm-hmm. Why is that?
Again, just haven't been there, and I try to check off places that I haven't been. I know it's amazing. The beaches are amazing. The people are amazing. The food is great. So I love to go places where there's acceptance and good time, where you don't feel like you have to be performative as a foreigner.
One book that you've read that you think everybody should read?
Probably Do the Kind Thing, which talks about focusing on your mission and not taking down what you feel your purpose is in order to have an enterprise. So just doing the right thing, basically doing the right thing is basically it.
One leader you would love to have dinner with, either alive or deceased?
That's tricky. Of course, Jesus is always a great one.
Mm-hmm.
But probably if I didn't do Jesus, I would probably say Thurgood Marshall.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. That's a good one. Best advice you've ever received?
Probably from my mom and dad, which is, you can handle it, Sonny. That's their little tag to me now. So that was something that my dad used to say. So now when things pop up, I'm just like, oh, I can handle it. And sometimes it is overwhelming, whatever the thing is. But because he spoke that in me, I'm like, it's fine. So my key is I usually just need to take a moment, reflect. And if that thought comes to my head, I'm like, oh yeah, I can handle it. If it's on my plate, I can handle it.
Worst advice you've ever received?
Anything negative. I don't think it's anything specific, but sometimes even the little, again, microaggressions or snarky comments are the things that impact you the most. So I would say anything negative. So I try to stay away from negative people.
I want to give you the last word. We've talked about a lot of things here. What is the one thing that you would want a person listening to this show to remember when the episode is off?
That you can do amazing things, whether you are in education, not in education, whether you have cancer or don't have cancer. It's all about mindset, right? It's about the narrative that you tell yourself. You have to believe in something beyond yourself. So for me, that's God, that's Jesus. And you have to trust even when you don't know your way. That's where your faith kicks in. And it doesn't mean that you're going to feel good about the decision to trust, but that's what trust is. I don't feel happy to trust God all the time. I don't feel excited to trust God all the time, but I know it's the right thing and I have to do it anyway. And therein lies the blessing. And you're going to walk away knowing that you're successful as a result.
Yeah, we're talking to Dr. Russell G. Brodie, Leadership, Loss, and Living a Life That Matters. Dr. Brodie, what's your handles? How can people find you?
I'm not really on social media much because I'm trying to limit that sort of thing. But usually I just tell people they can reach me by email. That's russellbro21@gmail.com if they need to shoot me an email or have questions about higher ed or anything else. russellbro21@gmail.
Are you on LinkedIn?
I am, but I rarely check it. Because I'm trying to focus on the things that matter and that are meaningful. But yeah, they can send me an invite through LinkedIn. So yeah, I'm on.
Okay, Dr. Russell Brodie, we are definitely happy that you took the time out from your busy schedule to be with us today. Any other words you want to add on our way out?
No, just I would say go forward. If you have a question, reach out to me. But we'll see you on the other side of success, and don't compromise on the way up.
All right, you heard it here. Dr. Russell G. Brodie, Leadership, Loss, and Living a Life That Matters. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Tony. I really appreciate it.
Enjoy your day.
Thank you. You too.